Hello everyone and welcome back to the Belgian Beer Brothers channel. Cedric here in Antwerp, and today we are going to taste another beer, of course, but we are going for another Trappist. Actually, we are going to taste the only Trappist that America ever produced, and this is also the only Trappist that is non-European. Now, of course, it is quite easy when half of the Trappists are Belgian. We are going to talk about Spencer Trappist Ale today. Spencer Brewery was part of St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, hence the name. Even though the Abbey was founded in 1950, the story of this Abbey goes back 125 more years, way back to 1825. Somewhere in the early 1800s, a few monks from La Trappe, back then in France, because even though they are located in Holland now, originally that was a French communion. But some of those monks, first they skipped down to Switzerland, they traveled a lot, but in the early 1800s they struck down in America, in Trappist, am I pronouncing that correctly, in Nova Scotia, and there they founded an abbey called Petit Clairvaux. Now, they started out with some troublesome years, and somewhere in between like 1811 and 1825, so between the preparations and the actual foundation of the abbey, there were only 5 monks left. Like I said, they had some troublesome years, and they reached out to many abbeys in Europe actually to get some help, and the French and Italian abbeys didn't really respond. Many of the monks actually returned to Switzerland and to France upon defeat of Napoleon, so the coast was clear again. But those 5 that left behind had, let's say, a very hard time until our friends from the St. Sixtus Abbey in Belgium, in West Vleteren, went to America to help out. Now, they didn't just help out a bit, they actually sent 18 monks to restart and to grow their abbey, and that was between 1857 and 1862, so well over 30 years after starting this abbey. So they have struggled for quite a while. Now, things did get better in those years, and in 1869, I believe, they were officially affiliated with La Trappe and officially recognized as a Cistercian abbey. Even better, by 1876 they had grown so much that they were actually elevated from an abbey to a monastery. So they had to elect an abbot to lead the monastery, and that honor went to a Belgian monk, one of the guys that started it all with them, or kickstarted it all with them, and that was monk Dom Dominique Schietekatte. And that name might ring a bell because the family Schietekatte, although they are not related, I believe, also have a beer history. Now, it is of course quite symbolic that a Belgian monk got elected as the first abbot for this monastery. In 1892, unfortunately, they had a great fire, and that fire actually burned the entire monastery to the ground. The church, as well as the library, the archives, everything in between and around it was burned to the ground, and nothing was left. So again, they got struck with demotivation, and it took them until 1894, so 2 years, to start rebuilding the abbey, or the monastery at the time. And as if it was God's will, in 1896, so again 2 years later, another fire got started and all motivation was gone. Actually, not much was left for them to use either. So they actually fled. At first, they fled to Rhode Island, where they inhabited another abbey, I believe called Lady of Our Valley. I'm not quite sure about that. And even though they sort of thrived there, eventually in 1950 they finally moved to Spencer, Massachusetts, after, you won't believe this, another devastating fire. Now, luckily in 1949 the community already bought a piece of land and they were preparing that to build a new monastery or new abbey. But this, really sped things up. So another fire, they had to move again, and they moved to Spencer, Massachusetts, where they're still located today. Of course, they started farming the lands and then doing all those things. And in 1954, they started producing jams and jellies with the herbs from their own garden, and they've actually never stopped doing that because today they sell over 30 flavors, I believe. So, of course, being Cistercian monks and being Trappist monks by extension, they were thinking about opening their own brewery in Trappist tradition. Of course, they do have that link with Saint Sixtus from West Vleteren and with La Trappe. So what did they do? They traveled quite a bit. They visited all the Trappist breweries. They opened their own state-of-the-art brewery in 2013 with the help of the monks of Notre Dame de Scourmont. And you will know that name because that's an abbey in Belgium where Chimay is brewed, the other Trappist. Of course, they only started that brewery after Abbot Damien Carr and his monks took several trips to Belgium and some other countries to visit all those Trappist breweries. And they actually started out at Westmalle at Father Thomas Brewery. Then they did the tour and they ended in St. Sixtus, West Vleteren, so their historic sister abbey. But not coincidentally, West Vleteren was also optimized by that same Father Thomas, just like Chimay, Scourmont, and our Limburg Trappist brewery was also optimized and actually ran for a while by Father Thomas of Westmalle. So you could say he is the Cistercian godfather of Trappist beer in Belgium, at least of our generation. So they opened up in 2013, I believe October, November, so just nearing the end of 2013. And unfortunately they closed down in 2022. So they brewed almost 9 years. They have a message on their website, which is the only thing left on their website. But it actually boils down to, for them, brewing is not a sustainable way of working and living, so they quit the brewery. They still make their other products, but the brewery is no more. They are selling out all their beers, or at least what's left of it, and I've been lucky to get my hands on a few of these, but bear in mind, importing American beers in Belgium, if they're exclusive as this, quite expensive. Nonetheless, in those almost 9 years, they've managed to brew 5 different beers. Of course, this one, the original, the Trappist Ale, a 6.5% blonde, top fermented beer, but we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But they also brewed the Holiday Ale of 9% ABV, an Imperial Stout of 8.7%, an IPA with 7.2%, and a Quadruple with 10.2%. And in my humble opinion, the La Trappe quadruple is one of the best of the world. So yeah, if it resembles that, even in a tiny amount, I'd be a fan. Now, of those 4 beers I just mentioned, the first 2, so the Holiday Ale and the Imperial Stout, as well as the Trappist Ale, were brewed with Belgian yeast. But for the IPA and the quadruple, they actually took their own yeast to make it more American tasting, which I find a bit odd, because personally I would think you would brew the Imperial Stout with the American yeast and the quadruple with the Belgian yeast. But of course this is all hearsay. I don't have that in writing. So nonetheless, apart from those yeast strains, they do or did always brew with locally grown or locally sourced products. They grew their own barley, they brew with water from their own well, and they exclusively used Yakima Valley hops, so from Washington. And of course, if you have such a small ingredients bill, you have quite a bit of control over that. Now to talk about this beer that we are gonna taste. Not only the beers are expensive in Belgium, also the glasses are. Unfortunately, you know that I am a collector. I am nearing the 400 different beer glasses. I know where to get my hands on one of the glasses. Unfortunately, it is so expensive. So I'll use my trusted tasting glasses. This beer is the mother of all Spencer Trappist beers. It is the original, the Trappist Ale. Like I said, the very first American Trappist beer and also the first non-European. In order, this was the 10th Trappist, by name at least. We used to have 11, but since Spencer quit and Belgium actually lost one as well last year, so I believe there are only 9 left. Don't quote me on that. Might be 10. Nonetheless, what do we find on this bottle? The best before date, which is in a few months, so I'll have to be quick. Ingredients: water, malted barley, hops and yeast, so no surprises there. Also lovely, simple paper labels, but this isn't just paper, this feels like parchment paper. Beer in 7,000 languages. Brewed and bottled by the Spencer Brewery in Spencer, Massachusetts. And Spencer Trappist Ale, American Trappist, pair with family and friends. Best pairing advice ever, by the way. You do see that they have this hexagon here, the authentic Trappist product. We are going to talk about that later. I'll make a video on that exclusively. And I love this deep blue and gold bottle cap with the fleur-de-lis and Spencer Trappist on there. So I am gonna preserve that bottle cap, turn it into a fridge magnet. Ooh. But first, that's a shame. Now it is said that this beer was brewed to tradition. It is unfiltered, unpasteurized, top fermented, re-fermented in the bottle, as we see right here, quote erat demonstrandum. But it was inspired by the classic Belgian blondes, and it is said that they used Westmalle Extra, so the monk's beer in particular. So let's see if we can taste that as well. It is a lovely color. Okay, some yeast residue in the bottle, because of course it is re-fermented in the bottle, like I said. Lovely, close to white foam. It's a bit off-white, but still a lovely color. It is a misconception that the foam on your beer has to be white. I think the foam in your beer has to be representative for that beer. And in this case, slightly off-white is a perfect color. The beer itself, slightly hazy, yet quite clear for an unfiltered beer. I'd call this golden yellow. Yeah, lovely golden color. Nice color in beer. We do see that the foam dissipates rather quickly, but we still have a small centimeter left. Some bubbling in there. So, carbon dioxide level quite alright, but we already saw that. It smells quite sweet, very malty as well. Quite boozy too. I do get some ethanol in the nose, and of course some carbon dioxide, but that's no surprise. And it does have a very pleasant smell, like a sweet malty, like a very full beer smell. Already love it. I have never tasted this before, so it is a surprise for me as well. Quite full mouthfeel, yet I do get the feeling that this is mainly the carbon dioxide talking, and a bit of the alcohol. I would have expected it more rounded, in that sense, more malty, more full flavored, more in the back of the throat as well. Nonetheless, very pleasant taste. So it's a bit thinner than I expected, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is indeed a bit malty, but not that much. I initially thought it's not very hoppy either, but in my second pass, I do get the hops in there. They're not very dominant, they're not very strong, but they are absolutely present. They are even very pleasant. It's a bit sweet bitter, but the main taste in this beer is actually sweet and malty. So it is a bit sugary, and I'm not saying they added sugar, but it is, yeah, a bit sugary. Like after fermentation, a lot of sugar is left. So normally, to end up with a 6.5% ABV, we brew a beer or a wort that has about, let's say, 15 degrees Plato of density. That is the sugar content. And with a beer like this that has a quite sweet mouthfeel and taste, they might have gone to 18 degrees Plato, for example. And if you would ferment that to 8.5% ABV, you wouldn't get that sweet taste. But if you only ferment it to 6.5, there is about 4 or 5 degrees Plato left of sugar, and then you get a quite sweet beer. But I'm getting very technical here. If you want to know more about that, let me know in the comments. I might elaborate on that in another video then. Okay, I do get the influence of the Father Thomas of Westmalle. It does have some fruity esters in the beer. Very, very subtle banana flavor, which is absolutely dominant in the Westmalle triple. But yeah, actually this is a nice light variant on the Trappist beers. Here in Belgium, most Trappist beers are quite strong. This is rather light. I'm not going to call it thirst quenching, because it's not. But it's a rather light, pleasant, sweet variant on the Trappist. So if they kept making it, I would order this. But nonetheless, let's leave it at that. All that's left for us to do now is score this beer, and I would say 7 out of 10, so 3.5 in Untapped. Yeah, doesn't really get me going, but it is a very nice beer, so pass. 3.5 out of 5. Anywho, I'm gonna leave it at that, guys. Yeah, as usual, if you have any questions, remarks, leave them down in the comments. If you have anything to say, I'd love to hear it, or any requests. If you like this video, let me know, hit that thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and you'll get notified whenever I upload something. You'll be the first to know. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers, you guys.